Now, the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, is expected to pledge that as Prime Minister, he would launch a new initiative with the explicit goal of reducing the price of energy.
Well, let's talk to Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who joins us now. Good morning to you. Wow, well, as a headline, everyone's going to cheer that on. Cheaper energy. How does all this work?
Well, firstly, Stephen, it's very good to join you. It's good to see you back on the breakfast show and fully recovered. So lovely to be on.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you.
A pleasure. Well, let me just say in respect of the Clean Power Alliance, because this is very, very important. It has two explicit goals. One is about energy security. We've all seen the problem of allowing our energy supplies across the world to be at the whims of dictators like Putin and the damage that has caused. And secondly, it is about driving down prices for consumers, for every household in the country. Now, we achieve that by working together with countries across the world that share our goal of getting to clean energy sources by 2030. So countries like the Netherlands, for example, Denmark, Portugal, Kenya, these are all countries that have already set out, they share that goal. And what we can do then is we can share information between us on the emerging technologies, like things like carbon capture and storage. We can work together to secure investment. But what we can also do collectively is to get resilience in supply chains. All countries doing this will need access to critical minerals. We can't allow vulnerability in our supply chains. That's something we can achieve with a Clean Power Alliance, and that's what the next Labour government will do.
I'm sure many people will agree with you that we need to look to the future now. We need to look towards clean energy sources. But right now, there are people in their homes who are struggling to heat them, simply can't keep up with the price of energy. We're in this energy crisis. And we know all too well, don't we, the dangers of depending on foreign oil and gas. We are rich in our own oil and gas in the North Sea, but Sir Keir Starmer speaking today is saying he doesn't want to use that any longer as a source. Doesn't that seem backwards in what we're dealing with right now? Isn't it time to harness our own rich resources?
Well, firstly, in relation to the immediate situation, it was Labour that was calling for the energy price freeze and pushing the government into announcing that. So we're very aware of the help that people need immediately. And by the way, we've also been calling too for the Chancellor to rule out a rise in fuel duty on hard-pressed motorists. So we'll continue to make the case for immediate action. But the reality is that we are facing a crisis of energy security. We're also looking to vitally tackle climate change. And in order to be able to achieve both those goals, we need a clean energy sprint. This government has fallen behind in that. It's only recently they lifted the ban on onshore wind that had been in place since 2015. They haven't put into place the appropriate gas storage that they should have done, for example. But now is the time to get those clean energy sources that we need for the future. And that both tackles climate change, but it also gives us energy security and drives down prices for consumers too.
On another matter, and I don't know if you've seen this, it's only just broken in the last few minutes. Unite has announced 10 new strike dates for ambulance staff. That's on top of the strikes they'd already announced, including one which is going to start, as you'll be aware, on Monday. What do you make of all of this? I mean, do you support as an individual? Does the Labour Party support this action now? Because it's clearly politically very difficult for the Labour Party, this, isn't it?
What's important in this situation is that it is a badge of shame for the government that you have workers in our healthcare sector, people who've gone in to the profession because they want to care for other people, who find themselves driven to these lengths in terms of taking strikes and indeed announcing potential strikes. What the government has to do is strain every sinew to prevent these strikes from taking place. And so far, what we've had from the government is either sitting on the sidelines and pretending that this industrial situation has nothing to do with them, or they've been aggravating the situation and making it worse. It is time to sit down and do that hard work of finding a negotiated solution. And the government has to redouble its efforts and do that now.
Having to fork out. I mean, we're in this situation, aren't we? I mean, one thing we're trying to avoid is wage inflation, adding on to the already strong inflationary pressures we're already feeling. I mean, you can understand it's as a party seeing yourself now as a government in waiting, whether you are or not, we shall find out in the course of time. But you have to really start assessing where the money comes from in all of this, don't you?
Well, look. Firstly, in terms of the next general election, the only poll that matters is the one that actually takes place on the day of that general election, Stephen. But in terms of these wider disputes, I used to be a barrister. I represented many people in negotiations. I was a mediator too, so I've seen these disputes from a more neutral position as well. And in each and every one, you never came out of the room where both parties to a dispute got all that they wanted. That isn't how negotiations work. And what has to happen here is you have to get around that table to find where the compromise solution might be. You contrast that kind of approach to what this government did, where Unison, for example, the healthcare union, was saying to the government only recently that they would call off their strike, not on the basis of being given a particular offer. They would literally have called off the strike if the government was willing to sit down with them and start that process, and the government did not do so. The government has to engage and find where those compromise positions are.
Along with you, but I wanted to quickly ask about the video of Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister up in the northwest yesterday, filmed on social media not wearing a seatbelt. He has already apologised for doing so, but it is being investigated by local police. Do you think that he should be fined?
Well, that's obviously a matter for the police, but that could well be, if that happens, that would be the second fine that the Prime Minister will have had, in addition to the fine that he received for his conduct during the parties in Number 10. But it really does show, doesn't it, this Prime Minister, because it's yet another PR video. I mean, I remember the PR video where he was trying, as I recollect, to hold a contactless card up against a barcode scanner. I mean, these are just frankly, just PR stunts, when what the Prime Minister should be doing is actually dealing with the substance of governing. I would say he should have been perhaps travelling or considering travelling by rail, but when you look at the mess the Conservatives have made of the railways, perhaps that's not such a surprise. But here we are, 13 years into a Conservative government, and I doubt we could name a single public service that's in a better condition now than it was in 2010. So my message to the Prime Minister is stay away from these attempted PR stunts and actually concentrate on the serious business of governing.
OK. Nick Thomas-Symonds, it's good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
Good to see you too. Thank you.